Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Mind the Mental Monday. I hope that everybody had a beautiful day. I certainly did. You might have seen the post I did earlier that I got out in that sunshine, and I decided it was like 75 degrees today where I live, and it was sunny and beautiful. And normally, because I work from home on Mondays and Tuesdays, and since, now the days are getting longer, a lot of times I don't really, when the days are shorter, I don't really get out, on Mondays and Tuesdays to walk or to do anything. Every once in a while, I might step outside just to get some fresh air, because I think that's important. But in the winter months, I don't usually venture out on Mondays. And but when you do that, sometimes that can like you kind of get in a habit of it. And I realize that that's something that's been happening. I've been sort of getting in a habit of just staying in the house on those days and just sort of just working and then preparing myself for Mind the Mental Mondays. And I today decided to make an intentional choice to get up and move and get out and walk. I have been sort of uh, getting a little lazy I'm just gonna be real with myself. Getting a little bit lazy and not, getting up and exercising in the way that I had started out to, been kind of slipping a little bit. And I realized that it is an intentional choice to do almost any and everything that you do in life. And it's one of the reasons that I um, decided to do this particular topic tonight on decisions, choices, and consequences, because we all, from very early in life, we begin making decisions. Even my, 3 and 1 year old grandchildren make conscious decisions to do certain things. And you can tell when they're about to make a decision to do something that they know they're not supposed to do, because they get that little look, they kind of look back, they kind of inch up to whatever they're trying to get into, and they kind of look, back at whatever adult is watching them. And they're waiting to see to just try you and see if you're going to say anything. Let's see if I can get away with this. Um, and so, so from very early in life, even in the very earliest development of our brains, we are we are making conscious and intentional decisions. Um, Sometimes decisions and choices are informed, and sometimes they're not informed. And so it's important that as we are growing, evolving, developing, that we are intentional about how we go about making our choices and decisions. And some of you, most people who are watch and follow Mind the Mental Monday are, likely over 50, grown, mostly women. So most of them are, I'll say over 40. Let's put it that way. Say over 40, but grown, right? Grown, mostly women. And some of you might have the thought, I don't need this. I don't need this. I've been making decisions and choices, for a long time now. I know what I'm doing. But I think that even in our later years, I think even those of us who are wise, and true wisdom helps you to understand that you are never too old to learn, um, and you're never too old to revisit things that you've learned before, because you might learn something new about yourself in the process. And that is true wisdom. True wisdom understands that you will never stop learning. The only time you will stop learning is when you stop breathing. But as long as you are breathing, as long as you are moving through this thing called life, you're going to be learning, you should be learning something. And if it's not something new, then you should be, having refreshers of some things that perhaps you forgot. So for some of you, this kind of a topic will be a refresher, because like I said, you've been making decisions and choices, and you understand that the decisions and choices you make produce consequences. Some consequences are good, some consequences are not so good, and some consequences are downright deadly sometimes, right? It just depends on the thing that you're making the decision about. But even people who the over 40 generation can make hasty decisions, can make decisions without thinking them through, and sometimes are not necessarily intentional with the decisions that they make. And if we are to be honest with ourselves, um, and if we would look at ourselves internally, many of us would come to the conclusion that even in those years where you should think that you should be wise, even in those years where you think that you should have it all together, even in those years where you think that you know what you're doing, you know how to make the right decisions for yourself, you grown. I'm grown. You hear people saying that, I'm a grown woman. I don't need to hear anything or learn anything about the decisions that I make. But many of us can look back maybe just a week ago. And in the course of that week, we might be able to find a decision that we made that we're able to look back and say, you know what, in hindsight, that was probably not the best decision. So I want us to talk about the process of decision making. And before we end Mind the Mental Monday tonight, I will be giving you some practical tips on how to go about making decisions, that are good. Some of the things that you should do before making decisions, before making any decision, not even just the big decisions, but even some of the small decisions, because some of the small decisions that we make can lead to consequences, bigger consequences that are not so good, right, in the future if we're not intentional and if we're not really thinking it through. So the first thing that I want to um, talk about is the fact that a lot of times people think that life just kind of happens, right? Like, you're just kind of going through life, and as you're going through life, as I've said many, many times, and sometimes we just don't even really think about it. We don't necessarily think about our day to day. Most of us have some kind of schedule that is pretty strict, especially if we're working. If we're still, if we're still working outside of the home, if we, and even when we have our own business, we might put ourselves on a schedule so that we can accomplish the tasks and things that we might want to accomplish. And we become almost robotic on a day-to-day basis, just kind of there are just a lot of, you can think about all the things that you do in the course of a day without even thinking, right? You know, wake up, whatever your morning routine is, if you have a routine, mine is to pray and to read scripture and to meditate and to just have that personal alone time with God, asking God to direct me throughout my day, to cover and protect me, praying for all the people that I pray for and so forth. That's how I start my day, and it's robotic. That's what I'm gonna do immediately when I get up. You know, we're gonna use the bathroom. All right. Um, but after that, I'm gonna because I take time in my personal time with God. And so, I want to kind of empty my bladder first and then come back and do what I do with God, right? So, um, So it's like clockwork. And after I finish that, then what I need to do is get back to exercising because that's what I used to do, and I kind of stopped doing that on an everyday basis. And I know I feel the difference, so I need to get back to that, which is an intentional choice, right? Even though it's like in my head, I'm saying I need to do it. I'm really making a conscious choice not to. I have a choice between sometimes when I finish meditating, I have a choice. I can either get up and exercise like I should, or I can turn over and lay back down for, 5, 10, 15, half an hour, 30 more minutes. And I'm gonna be real. Half the time, most of the lately, all the time, I've been picking the latter choice to like finish what I'm, meditating and then turn over and just lay back down for a few more minutes. And so I need to make the conscious choice to do the opposite. Because once I start doing that and once I make it a habit again, it will just become like clockwork again. It'll become a part of my routine to make that choice, right? To get my exercise in, go brush my teeth, wash up, do all the things, get dressed, and for the day. All of those things are just like clockwork. But you don't even realize that you're making a conscious decision to do those things because you don't have to, brush your teeth and bathe. Uh, but it would behoove you to. And I'm sure who the people that you work around or you're around during the day would appreciate it if you do that. Um, but those are still choices that people make. Um, the only time that you people really there are times where people can't really make choices for themselves, right? Um, certain choices young children can't make for themselves. Some choices, people with special needs might not have the mental capacity to make certain choices for themselves. So I'm not talking about that. People who are like imprisoned, or institutionalized in some ways may not be able to make certain choices. So there are some choices that you might not be able to make for yourself. But most choices can be thought through and made in a way that will produce a good outcome if we take the time to sort of think it through. So our entire lives are shaped by the decisions that we make. Think about people who, made a decision in their youth, um, to, ride around in a stolen car, or, worse, even like be around a group of people that's like murdering people or something like that. Like, and they end up, that one decision at like 15, 16 years old lands them in prison until they're 70, 80 years old, or sometimes not ever living the rest of their lives imprisoned. And that was one choice. That was one decision. So there are some decisions that we can make that can be really detrimental to our future. And not only detrimental to our own future, but if we have offspring, if we have children, if we have family members who love us, it is a detrimental for them as well. I've talked before about how when we commit sin, and it is to the degree that it impacts everybody else around you, your family, is embarrassed by the decision you made, or they lose you for whatever reason. Um, it is not only impacting you. Our decisions don't always just impact us. Our decisions impact those closest to us as well, very often. And so it's important that we really do think about, mind the mental is about thinking about your thinking. And so a part of minding the mental is really assessing how do we think about the decisions that we made? How do we come to making certain decisions. And so, we have. small choices, like what we eat, how we spend our time, how what we say to someone, those are choices that we might consider to be small. Um, but they could become major decisions because what we eat can impact our bodies. So what we eat could impact whether, even along with genetics sometimes, but not always, it can impact our health. It can impact whether or not we end up with high blood pressure or diabetes or, other sort of food related, certain kinds of cancers. It could impact a lot of things about our health, our heart. It could, if we eat a diet that's high in fat, it can help exacerbate heart conditions and heart failure and heart attacks that we might have. The level of stress that we allow in our lives, we can make a conscious decision that either I'm going to let this thing stress me to the hilt, or I'm not letting it stress me. I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna get rid of it. And I'm just not going to allow it to have that kind of power over me. So things that we think of as small decisions can really impact us in a big negative way long term if we don't make some changes, if we don't turn some things around. Some major choices can be who we choose to live the rest of our lives with, who we choose to partner with, whether that partnership be in marriage or whether it be in business. Sometimes, we might choose not so wisely, right? And who we partner with, who we choose as a life partner. Um, the career that we might pursue, that's a choice. And I know someone who is very she has a lot going on for her. She, is a internationally known researcher and physician, and she holds a lot of positions. And but she also, complains a lot about how packed her schedule is. And I always remind her that this was a choice, though. Like you chose this career path, and as a part of this career path, yes, because you are, you're a physician, you're a researcher, you're over two centers, you or have or you're over one center and you play a major leadership role in another one. Like you made these choices. And so while you're complaining about your schedule kind of stands to reason. It goes along with this choice that you made to pursue the career path that you pursued. And so just making her aware of, you have a big, wonderful career. But of course that career comes with sacrifices. As a result, she is always working. Never really taking time to just sort of smell the roses. And once in a while she does, and I'm happy about that when she does do that, but very rarely, on vacation, she's working. And there are a lot of people that are like that. So, but it's a choice. So you don't complain about it if because you can also make the choice, to scale it back if you want. You can resign some appointments. You can, do something else that doesn't require quite as much. That is a choice. You can choose to do that. And so, and how we respond to adversity is another one that we choose. When, certain things come our way, how we respond, as I'm always saying, one of the things that I say to my kids all the time is, just how um, you cannot change other people. You can't change other people's actions, but what you have the power over, what you can choose, and what you can decide is your own. your own behavior toward it, your response toward whatever it is that's coming at you. It is your choice to respond in a way that can either result in negative consequences for you or that can result in positive consequences for you. But you make the choice. So your future is being built one decision at a time. And those of us, as I said, most of those who I think watch Mind the Mental Monday tend to be a little older, at least over 40. They if we look back over our lives, um where we are right now is based on a series of decisions that we made, whether it be a decision to stay in school and pursue higher education on multiple levels, whether it is you made a decision to get a skill, or trade that you can then have your own business and be pretty lucrative. Like whatever the case might be, you can look back over your life and you can see all the decisions that you have made up until now. And you can also see areas in your life where even as, like I said earlier, even as near as last week where you might have made a bad decision. Um, and sometimes you say to yourself, like, how did I get here? Because you made a decision to do X, Y, and Z, which led you here. And so, just really being conscious of that and cognizant. And also understanding the power of the choices that we make. So one of the most powerful gifts that we have as humans is the power of choice, the power to make our own decisions. And, even when we might be under some dire circumstances, we still have the ability to choose. We have the ability to choose how we will deal with those circumstances, and how we will move, how we might need to shift our attitudes towards whatever that is, the direction that we choose to go. We have the power to make the choice to follow certain paths. And so we also have to understand that not choosing is still choosing, right? Because when you think, for example, well, a good example of this is elections. People who don't vote, because you have people that are saying things like, well, I don't do politics. Well, let me tell you, politics is doing you every single day. Um, and so when you decide not to vote, when you make that choice, you are making a choice, and your choice is, I don't care. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me, who's doing what, who is running what. Like, I just don't care. But that is a choice. And so whenever you don't vote, like whoever wins, you basically voted for that person because you gave over your power to everybody else to make this decision for you, which is also a decision. Like handing over your decision to someone else is still a decision, right? So we have to be, aware of that. Um, if we are to look at scripture, Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19 says, I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life. So even in biblical terms, it is directing us to choose life, to choose what's best, for us and for those around us. Choose, make a wise decision. And so, but wisdom comes with learning from the bad choices that you made before, right? So the reason that the older you get, um, presumably the wiser you get, because I have to be honest now. There are some elders that are elder in age, but in wisdom, they're not, they don't necessarily have wisdom, or they choose not to use their wisdom uh very wisely. They choose not to share their wisdom in the ways that that would might be considered wise. Still making choices as if they were like 18. Um, so but there are relationships between choices and consequences, as we know. And every choice produces a consequence. And not all consequences are necessarily punishments. Some consequences are rewards. So consequences can be good and bad. And based on the choice that you make, you might get a good outcome or you might get a bad outcome. Sometimes there are choices that you make that you feel like you thought through and you learn that it was a bad decision. So the reason that as we get older, um, presumably we should be also be getting wiser is because we now have had this thing called time to go back and examine some of the bad or poor choices that we made and understand what made them poor and learn the lessons from them that we need to learn such that we don't need to revisit that again. And then when we do learn from those lessons, it is up to us to then also share the lessons that we learned from our poor choices with the next generation. Um, my husband and I have shared many times with our children, like really bad choices, really poor choices that we made in our youth. And a lot of choices, a lot of bad choices that I made in my youth. I just really praise God because I have made some choices that really have put me in real danger. And when I think back on some of those choices, it's just like, God, thank you. Thank you for watching over me and making it such that, that poor decision that I made didn't land me in a real bad situation. And I've had a few of those. And, as I shared those with my children, I share that with them so that, when they were coming up, in hopes that they could learn from the wisdom that I gained from having participated in some things that were just ill advised, right? And did they, always learn from my poor decisions? No, because the truth of the matter is that many of us in our youth, we, for whatever reason, have to uh, go through these things for ourselves. We have to, for some reason, we got to touch the oven and to really believe that it's hot. And that for whatever reason, that's just how we can be wired sometimes. But when we become seasoned, when we were young, we spoke, when I was a girl, I spoke as a girl, I reasoned as a girl, but now that I'm a woman, I need to reason as a woman who has learned some things over this course, these, 57 going on 58 years of life on this earth. That's a lot of years to be in a lot of learning. And not most learning doesn't occur in school. Most learning occurs in life. That's the school of life, right? The school of hard knocks, sometimes is what allows us to learn the most and gain the most knowledge so that in the age where we are now, we can really think about ways to intentionally make our decisions, make the best decisions that we can for ourselves. So, if we were to give examples of how choices impact the consequences. So, for example, you know, Healthy choices often lead to better physical health. I'm not going to say it always does because there are times where there are definitely many, many stories of people who do all the things. They exercise, they eat right, and they do all the things, and they still end up with some kind of disease. Um, so sometimes genetics, plays into um, health, but overall, healthier choices, even if you end up with some kind of a disease, healthier choices in general do lead to better physical health. Um, if you save consistently, if you are working in a job where you can have a retirement plan, a 401k, or some such. It is wise to enroll in those and save for your future because it can lead to financial stability and financial freedom. I didn't necessarily make the best decisions in that area. And so now I'm finding myself trying to play catch up. But I'm not mad at myself that I'm making the decision now to do that. I'm making the decision to catch up. I'm, working with a financial advisor who is helping me, to make better decisions and to make it way more feasible that I can retire in 5 years, which is my goal, which is what I'm planning to do. Even though I'm eligible right now, I could retire right now from my job. I'm eligible to do that, but I've given myself 5 more years to put myself on a better financial footing so that my future in retirement can be more stable than it would be if I decided to come out now. But that's an intentional choice to spend, a few more years and and help towards giving myself a better future financial outcome as a result. Kindness can build stronger relationships. You know, being establishing relationships where they are mutually beneficial, where each of you is benefiting in one another in some kind of a way. That those kinds of decisions can build relationships that can help you even build some aspects of your future, can help you to network, can help you just in terms of having that person um, that will encourage you in those times where you're discouraged, in those times where you feel like you just can't you just can't get it or you can't catch a break. You need somebody in your ear saying, "Listen, I know it's rough out here, but you can do this. You can make it." You need that. You need those kinds of relationships in your life where you can count on somebody who is going to call you or text you to say, not to say, "Hey, this is what I need," but to say, "Hey, I'm just checking on you. I don't want nothing. Just checking on you. Just want to see how you're doing." Right? And we know, those relationships where it's one-sided and, you have people that the only time that they seem to contact you is when they need something from you. Um, Sometimes you have to make a decision to snip snip those relationships. That's a choice. That is a choice. That is a decision um, that can help you to build better communities around you that will, again, be mutually beneficial for those that are in that community. Um, on the contrary, things like poor, um, impulsive spending can lead to debt. There was a time where, you know, I had gotten, this is when I was really young, when I was in college. In college, the credit card people be on the college campuses just waiting, right, to suck you in to to some stuff. And I decided to get a credit card. And, I started doing things like, if I felt down or something, oh, I'm gonna go shopping. I'm not shopping with money that I have. I'm shopping on a credit card, and I'm not really sure how I'm gonna pay it back. And then I lied. First of all, I lied to get the credit card. I'm 100. Like I put on the credit card application something like I said, my parents send me, $200 a month or something like that. Something crazy like that. I said, my parents weren't doing that. What? We helping you pay to go to college. We not about to send you $200 a month. This is in the 80s, y'all. But that's real, that's how I got that credit card. And then that was my first, it was a Discover card. And guess what I discovered? I discovered that Discover don't love me. That I racked up all kind of debt and then had to struggle. I struggled to pay it back. And then I paid whatever I bought, the stuff that I bought, because the interest rate was so high. I want to think the interest rate was something like, I don't know, 20%. It might have been like 26%. It was really high. I want to think about that. I want to think nothing about that. All I was thinking about, oh, I can buy, the latest styles, and I can go out and, go out to happy hour, and all that kind of foolishness that you're into, and when you're young, all the things. But when I tell you that after I graduated college, like I was still paying off them credit cards. It was a bad decision because all of that money could have been going to a savings account, a money market account, or something that I could have been preparing for my future. Um, And so, but I decided to be unwise. Um, Ignoring your mental health can what? Lead to burnout. You ignore when you don't mind the mental. It's why I do this every single week, y'all, because I really want you to understand the importance of minding your mental and be cognizant and intentional about doing things that are going to strengthen your mental health, because everything is, as I always say, everything is connected. Mental health is health. It is connected to your physical health. So, when you have so much on your mind and you're not doing anything with it, and you're just letting stuff ruminate in your head, is causing high anxiety, which then is causing high blood pressure, which then can lead to poor cardiovascular health and all kinds of other conditions. So it's all tied together. And so it's why choices matter. It's why choices matter when you're minding the mental, because some choices will have us so down and so depressed and so out of it that we find it really hard to recuperate from them. Sometimes we make bad decisions or poor decisions, and we beat ourselves up so bad that we are unable to really climb out of that and move forward. Understand this. Everybody but everybody has made poor decisions at some point in life. Literally everybody. Every single person, everybody has made some kind of poor decision. When you make a poor decision, don't beat up on yourself constantly about it. Yes, be real with yourself. Accept that you made a poor decision. Hold yourself accountable for that decision that you made. But if you make a poor decision, holding yourself accountable is different than beating yourself up about it. You made a bad decision. You made a bad choice. Give yourself the grace that moving forward, you don't ever have to make that choice or that decision again. What did you learn from it? What did you learn from that decision? How can you turn it around? What are there things that you can do to rectify the decision? And if there's nothing you can really do about it, if the decision that you made has caused something that is irreparable, that you cannot repair, you can't repair it. You're certainly not going to repair it by beating yourself up about it. So some of those things you have to just let them go and move forward in your life and say, I'm really sorry that I made that decision. But guess what? The beauty is I don't have to ever make that decision again. And I can recuperate from it. I can move forward. Um, when you decide to be dishonest, that leads to broken trust. And trust is real hard, especially when you break trust. It's somebody that you really trusted, you really thought, really had your back, but they do something. You find out somebody that you really, really trusted does something, cuts you behind your back. I mean, that trust, regaining that trust is really, really hard because now it's like, well, now you start thinking about other stuff. Maybe I shouldn't have trusted that. Was that real? You start asking yourself these questions. And so you don't want to be the person on the end, on the dishonest end, where somebody is saying, I can't trust him anymore. Like I really can't, I just can't, I don't trust him. You don't want to be that person that's not trusted. And so while you cannot control every single circumstance in life, what you can control is the decisions that shape your response to those consequences. And so, um, one of the things that the next thing that I want to talk about is why is it that people make poor decisions? Think back on some poor decisions you made. Why did you make that decision? And if you feel so free or bold or whatever the case, put it in the chat. What is a poor decision that you made and why did you make it? What caused you to make that decision? So, some reasons for making decisions or making poor decisions um is emotional decision making. You're sort of in the moment. You're angry, and because you're angry, you just snap and you just, you blurted out something that has now hurt this person that you love is going to have that in their ruminating their minds for moving forward. They're not going to ever be able to unhear what you said. But because you made the decision to say it, to blurt it out in anger, in a fit of anger, now you have possibly dissolved a relationship that could have been a good one because you were not able to exercise some self-control. It could be you can try to make decisions about things while you're experiencing loneliness. And so sometimes loneliness can cause us to connect with people who don't really mean us any good, right? You're lonely, you really want to be in a relationship, and so now you allow yourself to just kind of, go out with anybody. You allow yourself to be in a relationship that where you're being mistreated, but because you are afraid to be alone, because you're afraid to be lonely, you allow yourself to just put up with all kinds of things that you shouldn't, just so because you feel like you won't be lonely anymore, but yet you're still lonely. I mean, you can be in a room full of people and be lonely. How many of you have been in a room full of people and felt lonely? And yes, I am intentionally raising my hand this time. How many, just somebody put it in the chat, like, have you ever, been in a room full of people and yet felt lonely, felt like you were all alone? And so you make a choice to then just gravitate towards anybody that you think will accept you. It is how a lot of people become a part of gangs because the people in the gang seem to embrace them in ways that others don't. Maybe they're family members, they come from families where their parents don't are neglectful. or just don't seem to be interested in them, and so they gravitate towards people who don't mean them any good, but yet it seems like they do mean them some good. It seems like this is the family that I don't have that I've already wanted, and so I'm going to make a decision to connect with this group of people that's likely going to end me either in jail or early grave. It's how decisions are made. Decisions can be made out of fear, fear of loneliness, fear of name it, things that you fear that, cause you to make decisions that can ultimately hurt you. Um, Frustration. Sometimes we make rash decisions just out of being frustrated. And then, when we look back on it, it's kind of like, man, I I should have held off on that decision. So there are a lot of reasons why people make poor decisions, and I'm sure that everybody listening to this has likely experienced at least one category of why they made a poor decision. They were angry, they were lonely, they were fearful of something, they were frustrated. I'm sure that, our people have everybody has found themselves doing that in some of those categories, but emotion brings about clouded judgment. And so sometimes we have to sort of dial it back. We can also make bad decisions because we feel pressure from other people. Our friends, when we're young, we're with friends, and they want to go and get into some mischief, and they want you to come along, and it's like, come on, come on, come on, you can come on, it's gonna be fun, it's gonna be this, it's gonna be that. And the next thing you know, because you with the crowd, you out here, you in jail, you in the hospital, you in an accident, all kinds of things that can come about. But peer pressure, family expectations is another thing that can cause us to make decisions that might be poor for ourselves, even decisions that might seem good in the long run. There are people who, for example, they go to medical school, right? And they become physicians, not because that's something that they wanted to do, not because they felt like that's what they were called to do, but because that's what their parents pushed them to do. And so there are a lot of people out here practicing medicine who are doing that not because they are really care about people like that, or because they really want to make a positive difference. It's, well, my mama, my daddy, my uncles, everybody in our family went to medical school, and so that was the expectation for me too. So that's where I went. Now I'm practicing medicine, but it's not a good decision for you because you're miserable. You're doing something that makes you really miserable. Social media comparison, which we talked about ad nauseum and which we hear about all the time, that you really pull us down like, oh, look at that person over there. They've got, 500,000 followers and I've got three, you know. Um, and we compare ourselves and we compare our content and look what they're able to do and, all the things, right? But those are things that can cause us to make poor decisions. Another thing is short-term thinking, where you're not thinking about the future. You're thinking about right now, this is kind of what I want to do right now, but you're not really thinking about the impact that this can have on your future. And then there's a lack of reflection, just sort of not just sort of moving through life, la la la, and just not really fully thinking as you're moving through life, and then just reacting to things rather than thinking things through, or rather than being intentional, or proactive. We're being reactive. So, it intentional living causes us, it requires of us to sometimes pause and evaluate the decisions that we need to make, the choices that we make, and the consequences of those. What will they be? Really thinking it through. So here are some practical steps for making wise decisions. Y'all ready? Y'all ready to write them down? Practical steps for making wise decisions. If you don't have something to write them down with, if you miss it, you can rewind. Later on, you'll be able to go to my YouTube channel. You'll also be able to go to my website, benitaweathers.com, and you will see the blog post that goes with this Mind the Mental episode, and it'll all be there. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the website, benitaweathers.com. All right. So here are practical steps for making wise decisions. One, pause before deciding. Sometimes when you find yourself being angry, if you find yourself being frustrated, if you find yourself getting this high, your anxiety is raising and you're like getting tense and all of that, take a beat, take 5, take 10, take what you need, go step away, breathe. Um, allow yourself to calm down before making some kind of impulsive decision that is going to lead to a bad or negative consequence or some kind of unnecessary problem. You've created a problem now that you maybe, if you just took a beat, just took a few minutes, just stepped aside, stepped back, and breathe, that you might be able to make a better decision or a better choice. So here's some questions to ask yourself in those moments. Do I need to decide right now? One of the things that we may that marketing people have discovered is that if they are able to hold you like on the phone, or like even when you go to the mall and they have those little kiosks out in the mall with people trying to sell stuff and they like, hey, smell this scent. If they can get you to stop and listen to them, or on the phone, if they can keep you on the phone, if you haven't hung up in the first few seconds and they're able to keep you, 9 chances out of 10, they're going to be able to convert you into buying something that you don't need, right? Spending money unnecessarily because you didn't sort of pause and ask yourself, wait, do I need to make this decision right now? You have people like, oh, you gotta decide right now because it's this deal is about to go away. If you don't decide, right now, you're not gonna have an opportunity for this deal again. Oh, okay. Well, another one will come along. If I decide that that's something I really need, the deal is not going to be, it's not going to make or break the decision anyway. If it's something I really need, I'm gonna just get it. It is why I talk about this a lot, but my dad, if you asked him for money for something, that it was always 80 million questions. And by the time you got to, question number, 79,999,000,000, 79 million. I mean, before you got to the 80 million question, it would be like, you know what, just forget it. I don't, just forget it. I don't feel like I'm answering all these questions about why I need it and, well, what is it going to do and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want to hear all that. Just give me the money. But no, he's not going to do that. He would ask you a bunch of questions, and by the end, if you still were asking by the end, if you answered all the questions, and he might consider it. But if after a few questions, you just be like, just forget it. That's okay. Then he'd say, well, that means you didn't need it anyway. So that's why I did that, because you were able to think through that you really didn't need whatever it was. And you're just spending money unnecessarily, just for no real reason. You just wasting money. Uh, so, deferred gratification, his favorite term, which I hated growing up, but I'm so grateful for it now. as I'm still learning that. All right. So, um, another question is, have I considered the outcome? Like, what might the outcome be if I make this decision right now? Give yourself time. Take a step back and really think it through before making some kind of rash decision. Um, you need to have that space because that's how wisdom works. Wisdom doesn't sprint to a decision, right? Wisdom is a marathon. Wisdom takes it one length at a time, right? And so take a step back. It's nothing, it's usually nothing that you need right this minute. It's usually something that you can wait. The second thing is evaluate the long-term impact. It's not just about right now, but what might the long-term impact be of this decision that you're making right now? So ask yourself, how will this decision affect my life in 5 years? Will this move me closer to my purpose or further away? And that's what my this gets at what my dad was always talking about with deferred gratification. Like you don't always have to gratify yourself right now. Because that gratification can quickly turn into a thorn in the side if you make it too hastily. You need to get this thing right now. So you use this credit card to get it, and now you're in insurmountable debt and you can't see your way clear to get out of it. So those are things that we need to think about. Seek wise counsel. Some decisions, there are others, maybe whether it's work related or career related or even relationship related. Sometimes there are people that have been through some things who can offer sound advice to you about the thing that you are trying to make a decision about. There are some decisions that are for you, but that you don't necessarily have to make all by yourself. You can seek sound wisdom, sound counsel, in order to make the best decision. Ultimately, the decision is yours. Ultimately, the decision is about you. But sometimes, you want to consult with people that have experience, people that have wisdom, and people that have integrity, people that really desire the best for you. You know that you can trust. You know that you're not going to tell them something and then it's going to be all over the place, all in your community and out in your church and out in your organizations and out on social media and all those things. Is somebody with integrity, that really wants what's best for you. Um, Check the alignment with your values. Does this decision reflect who I want to become? Does it align with my faith and my principles? So these are questions that can help you make sound decisions. Um, so when decisions conflict with your values, with your principles, you can feel that in your gut. Because it's that thing in your gut that says something ain't quite right with this. I think I need to back away. I think my decision needs to be that I'm not going to move forward with that. Because you can feel it. You feel it in your gut. You know it's the wrong decision for you. You already know. But sometimes, because of peer pressure, because we think we're going to lose a relationship. Some relationships, as I say all the time, need to be lost. We're afraid we're going to be alone, and all those things will cause us to make decisions that conflict with our own values. We need to pray and reflect. And really, that's number one. That's the first thing. If you are one who believes in the power of prayer, if you are one who believes in God leading you and guiding you, pray and reflect about the decision before actually making this decision. but also not using prayer as a reason to not make the decision or as a crutch to um sometimes people use, oh, I got to pray about it, and what they really mean is they really don't want to do it. It's something they already made up in their mind that they're not going to do, but they use prayer as a crutch. That's not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about sincerely going to God and asking God to help you make a wise, sound decision about a particular thing. And then walking it out in faith. You know, whatever you feel that God is telling you to do. Um, all right. So we are at our hour at 9 o'clock. But I hope that this was, helpful for some of you in terms of there might be somebody here right now that is in the throes of needing to make a decision, and it could be a difficult decision. I hope that this allows you um, to make the best decision possible for you and for those that are connected with you. So, accept responsibility. Um, get eh, get connected with people that you can trust, who can be encouraging, who have wisdom, who have integrity, who can maybe help you think through some scenarios or think through some things. Um, you know, and to make what's the best decision for you. So in closing, here's some reflection questions that you can kind of review over the next week. He, ask yourself, what decision am I currently avoiding? All of us have been there. Like, it's a decision you got to make, but it's a hard one, and it's like you avoid it, and it's you procrastinate, and it's like, oh, just can I get an extension? Can I get an extension on that decision? But you know at some point that you have to make this decision. So what decision am I currently avoiding? What choices am I making repeatedly that are producing negative consequences, right? What choices are you making over and over and over again, expecting a different result? Definition of insanity. And then lastly, what intentional decision can I make this week that moves me toward growth? What intentional decision can I make this week that moves me toward growth? So, all of life is one decision, one choice after another. All of those decisions, all of those choices come with consequences, whether it be good or bad. Do your best to make the best decision for you. And ask yourself those questions. Don't make rash, rushed decisions. Take some time, take a beat, step back, think think it through. Allow yourself to think it through so that you can make decisions that will lead to good consequences. All right. Hope you learned something from this Monumental Monday or were reminded of some things. And I hope that it helps you in your decision making moving forward. So, also remember on March 21st, I will be having a free virtual event that I hope that you will make. I will be putting out the flyers and the invitations. It will be a free event, but you will need to register. And so I will let you know, but I will be doing that this week, getting that out. And I hope that all of you will join me. I'm going to be talking about rewriting the song in your head. I'm going to be talking about, giving practical ways that you can remove those old songs that play in your head and replace it with something new that's going to propel you forward. I'm also going to have opportunity for you all to discuss to have a discussion. So it won't be like a webinar; it'll be a Zoom call that we will be able to have a discussion together. And I hope that it builds community. It'll also be fun. We're going to do some fun things as well. There's going to be a raffle giveaway. So I'm excited about it and looking forward to meeting some of you who might be watching Mind the Mental Monday that I haven't had a chance to meet, that I don't know. So I'm looking forward to that and hope you will join me. All right. All right. Here we are. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I'll see you next week. God bless. Bye.